Hello, everyone. This is Nikolai with Raising Readers. Hello. I think I'm live. All right. So hopefully everyone is getting this, and it will go well like last week, and it played afterwards, and so all of that was good. And I want to make a couple of announcements first. That a lot of people weren't on the live broadcast. Two things really quick. So I'm going to have tea and water, and so I apologize if that's rude to be drinking while I did the webinar, but last week I was very parched, and so this is going to help. So last week I didn't have a lot of live viewers, but throughout the week I did get some good views. I think it was like 38 people that viewed it. It might have been my mom and all her friends, but I know at least a few of you guys did watch it because I got questions and comments and feedback, and so that was really great. So I want to remind you that I will do this every week at 9 o'clock on Wednesdays. If there's any changes, I will let you guys know. But please, the benefit of doing this live is that if you have questions, I can answer them, even though if I'm totally honest, I'm not really sure how to do it yet. Okay, so group chat. So if you have questions, I can answer them, and so that's really good. I want to make a couple of announcements. Remind you that I do have the Raising Readers DVD available for sale. It's $5 and it ships for $2.50, so it's $7.50, and you can do it now through a PayPal invoice, or you can I have this app that one of you guys requested, and it's Square Cash. So you can also use that, and I will more than gladly use it to take payment. You can also order my book, and even though the DVD and the book are for parents 0 to 5, I really feel that, you know, you teach literacy one way, and so building the blocks when you're working with children that are older, you're just going to use and build that skill at a more challenging level, but the skill and how you do it is pretty much the same. And so I do think that buying DVD, even if your child is older, is a great thing. And if not for yourself, think about this. A lot of us never understood or even thought that our children would have would struggle with literacy. And so if you're a parent that has a child that is a struggling reader, you are the best advocate for early literacy, because you can talk to your peers that are having children and say, hey, I never thought that this would be a problem that I would be encountering. And you know, these are the challenges that children go through inside the public school system. You can avoid them by making sure your children are ready to read or reading by the time they go to kindergarten. The best advocates for early literacy are parents that have children that are struggling readers. And so that's how community works, and how this work spreads is that we take, because when parents have babies, they're not thinking about their literacy levels. They're just not thinking. They're thinking of how cute their toddlers are. So the best way that we get this work to grow and how we get this going is really to have you guys be advocates for early literacy, and we can stop the hemorrhaging, stop the problem. And so a way for you to pay it forward the same way that I'm paying it forward to you is for you to advocate. So that's it. So just tell people, you know, get it for them, give it away, tell them to follow the account, and do all that good stuff. And whatever you learn, of course, always, always, always invite people to the webinar, invite people to look at the recorded broadcast, but whatever works for you and whatever gems you take, share them. That's the whole thing about this, that we're paying it forward at all times. So that's that. The other thing is that someone did ask me, last week I talked about crystals and just using other kinds of things to kind of get your child to be more focused and centered. I had some questions about that. Someone asked me, 2 people asked me where I got my crystals or what crystals I recommended, and I just wanted to give you resource. Is who I'm using for my crystals and that kind of work. It's not. I'm going to give you. It's Beach Bum, B-U-M Wisdom Co. Like Beach Bum Company. So Beach Bum Company, beachbumco.com, and that's Naima, and she's great. She is amazing, has great energy. She's Black. She's a woman. She's a small business owner. So you should support her. And that's what I wanted to say. And then her Instagram is Beach Bum Wisdom. And of course, you can find a local crystal person. You can find someone locally or somebody that you know. But if you don't have a crystals person or someone in that line of work, that's a great resource for you. I also mentioned this. Oh, I wasn't finished about my book. My book, I don't have a picture of it here. It's all over my Instagram. You can also order that through PayPal or Square Cash or on Amazon. I would prefer for you to order it from me, not just because I get $2 more, because it's not the $2, but it's because that way you have access to me. I know who you are. You can email me questions and so forth, because you might want to give me feedback if you find a typo, who knows. So the book, this DVD, Naima, and then this. So last week I talked about this book for a little bit. This educator is amazing. And this is Smart Moves by Carla Hannaford. And this is just one of my go-to books. It's really, I mean, I have like 30 favorite parenting books, but this is really one of the tops. One of the books that I really love because it changed my perspective on how I viewed the child and the process of learning. And I use some of the resources in this are also in my book, and it's just wonderful. So I wanted you to see this, just kind of administrative stuff. So moving right along. And again, I don't know how you guys can do the group chat, but if you have any questions, it's on, I believe, and you can ask something and I will answer. The other thing, so today I wanted to talk about, I set up the agenda to start with phonics, because I think that that's kind of the foundation and where I always start when I do a reading intervention and when I work with children. But the thing is that I never really stake on phonics. So my approach to reading intervention is a very integrative approach. So it's hard for me to break it down in topics, and I am going to do phonics separate. I'm going to do that when I have more viewership, because I get a lot of questions and it's kind of meaty work. So I want to make sure that as I'm going through the process of doing it, that if people are not getting something, that they can ask me. So that's going to be hopefully a very interactive webinar. So that's why I'm going to put that kind of to the side. I wanted to talk about reading comprehension. That was kind of where I was going for today, because a lot of us don't think about our children reading when we think about, well, we read, or even adults, or whether they're in middle school or in high school, or adults, or our 5th graders, 4th graders, we're like, our children do read. So why are they reading below grade level? And again, this goes all the way through adulthood. It's because they're reading at a level, like their reading comprehension, or our collective reading comprehension as a community, is lower than it should be. And what that means is, when we think about it as an adult, and I speak to this on the DVD, it's that we're talking about functional illiteracy. It means that as an adult, you're not able to look at legal documents, look at medical documents, look at insurance documents. You're not able to synthesize information, to take it apart, to put it together. You're not ready to process a bill. You can't focus when you read. You have to read things over and over again. It means that as an adult, you can't really participate in the legal process, or just the healthcare process, or even, we talk about our community getting knowledge of self, but a lot of us are not reading at the levels that texts are written at. And so whether you're talking about a 2nd grader or you're talking about an adult, having functional illiteracy is that you can read, but you're not able to produce, or you're not able to analyze and retain the information of a text reading at your level. And that's a problem that we have in our community across the board. And really, when you don't read at that level through the lifetime of a person, so a person who's reading below grade level, a person who's functionally illiterate, so they are literate, functionally literate, where they are literate, but they're not operating at a maximum level, their income potential, their earnings potential is going to be decreased over the course of his or her life by 50%. So you guys are going to hear me say this over and over again. It's part of the Raising Readers agenda and work, saying that over the course of a person's life, if they're reading below grade level, if you're functionally literate, but you're not reading at your best, the person's income potential is reduced by 50%. That means Joe should have been a top performing engineer. He was given God gifts, the universe gave him those gifts. That's what he was going to be, but he cannot be there. He cannot reach his earning potential or his life potential, even though he has those gifts, because he cannot go to the college that he was supposed to, he cannot produce the kind of work that he's supposed to, and so forth, because of this literacy block. And so if we look at our community, if we have masses of children graduating from high school, 80%, 80 to 88%, graduating and not reading at that level, so they're functionally illiterate, producing at lower levels, as a community, we're hemorrhaging, we're losing a lot of earning potential. And so if we want to do this work and we want to get our children up long term over the course of their lives, they will not lose that earning potential. And in essence, we give them and the community as a whole a raise. So this work is about alphabetizing. This work is about raising readers. This work is about making sure that our children are empowered and perform better. But in a bigger scale, this work really is about giving our communities a raise and giving our community collective power. We don't want money, we don't want fame, we don't want a lot of things, but we can say that those things are unimportant, but we do want to have collective power, and a lot of that comes from economic, and a lot of that comes from us working as a unit. And in order to do that, we have to have the bases covered. Some of those basics, of course, are, to have our children, our capital asset, performing at their best. So that's what all of this is about. Moving forward. So we do need to work on comprehension. We do need to make sure that our children are reading, that they have fluency, that they're able to comprehend and get the most out of the text when they're reading. How do we do that? So that was kind of where I was going. Then I have some questions on email. So I'm going to kind of integrate it all. One of the reasons that our children have issues with reading comprehension, of course, is if they're lagging readers. So if they're not reading fluently, their mind has to process what they're reading, try to decode, trying to do the phonics thing, and at the same time, they have to think about the text. It becomes too much for them to do, and so they're reading, they're trying to decode, and then by the time they get to the end of the text, they forgot everything they read. So the first thing that we do when we work on a reading intervention, of course, is that we're going to work on phonics and fluency. And that's something that is just kind of like a drill skill, something that we just have to do. We have to do that phonics work. We have to build that foundation. But as we do that, we also, especially when a child is 0 to 5, not yet learning to read, we can build it into his or her brain to always look for meaning in text. And so that's why early literacy is so important, is that we don't have to teach it later if we've already taught it as we go. And so every time you pick up a book, you ask, what's going on with the title? What do you think is going to be here? I wonder what we'll read about today. I wonder what this character will be. I wonder if this book will be just like this other book. If you start to do that with children when they're 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, every single time that you pick up a book, You ask a question before, you ask a question as you're reading, you ask a question at the end. That child's brain is already going to be to learn and to be wired, like literally wired, and make the connections that when we read to get information out of it. So even if you read to your child every single day, if there's somebody else reading to their child every single day and asking questions before, in the middle, after, that child, even though those two children, even though they both have been read to every day, one child is going to have an advantage because that child is going to understand that when we approach the book, when we approach text, we're always approaching text to get something out of it. That is why we read. We read to get something out. We write to put something in. We write to put something out. We read to get something in. And so that is really why we're reading. And it's very important for young children, very young children, to get that wired into their brain. And that is why it's so important to have early literacy. But here you have a child that's already in school and is a struggling reader, struggling with reading and reading comprehension. So now you have to kind of like play with that. Same thing. Whenever you guys are reading, you guys are going to want to ask questions about the text. Even as you sit down with your child, you already know that what you're going to do. You're going to work on a passage. You're going to say, what are we going to, these are the things that we need to get. Who is speaking? Why did the author write this? What is the kind of information that we're getting? Be aware when you're reading, what are the emotions? Feel your energy, feel your hear in your voice. What does it sound like? How does it feel? Really, when we tap into our feelings, we really can help our brain get more out of the text. So really start having conversations with your children to systemically really look at the text and just always be like, look, when we're reading, we're getting the most out of the book. Before we start to read, let's think about why this author is writing this. What are we getting out of it? When you read something, if you're reading nonfiction, what are some of the facts that you just read? How is this different than what didn't you know about the text or the subject now that you didn't know before you wrote it? Before you read. So you're always going to ask questions. Here's the thing. We're working with our children because they're struggling. So we have to know, like I said last week, that this is a team. Now, at this point, when your child is struggling and you're taking this on, this is not about your child getting better. This is about, you guys are a team. You're going to do this together. And so when you go read, you're reading together. Like a lot of the times I tell a parent, whatever your child just read, you have to make sure you read it too. So whether it's one paragraph or a chapter, you have to read it right along with your child. Read it before, hopefully read it before, or read it maybe while they're completing something else, because I know a lot of parents don't have a lot of time. But you have to make sure that you have read whatever you're asking your child to read so that you can engage and have a conversation about that text. It is very difficult for you to sit and have a child read a passage, and then you're going to sit there and be like, so what do you think the author just said? Or you write it down. You don't know if that's correct or not. So mistake number one is that you as a parent, a lot of the times parents are not reading what they have just asked that child to read. So when it comes to reading comprehension, you're relying on whatever they tell you that they got out of the text. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to understand that once you're doing a reading intervention, and once your child is a struggling reader, you're about to learn all of the sounds of phonics. You're about to learn rhymes. You're about to learn how to read things and get the main topic and the main idea. You are going to do this work right there with your child. And so that's one thing. Whatever it is that you're reading, make sure that you both read it, and that before you approach that text, you guys are already talking about it. I love chapter books. And I have a lot of parents that get their children books, and it's for the child to write. So they want their child to for that child to read. They want their children to improve their reading, and so they start giving their children a lot of things to read. Now, let's think about how much sense that makes. Your child, what if you were at work and you were struggling with a particular area of things to do, and your boss just gave you more of it for you to do? You would be so frustrated because now you have more of the thing that you're struggling with, and then your boss is just putting it on your desk and walking away. Every day, just putting it on your desk and walking away. So your workload is really piling and your stress is increasing. So what you have to do as a parent is, like, the interventions, the sessions when you work and you do the work every day, shouldn't be, when you really sit down, they shouldn't be longer than 30 minutes at a time. Maybe you take another break, and maybe later on you might do another session, but those should be about 30 minutes. There should be some independent reading, and the key to independent reading is engagement. So just take a little mental note, and we'll leave the point where I was. We'll come back to that point. But when I say engagement, I mean, you have to get your children all kinds of books. So I have like all kinds of books here to show you. Sorry about that. Like, I don't know what my child is gonna like. So I go to the Goodwill and I get, and when I say my child, I don't just mean my son, because he reads everything, but I mean the children in my neighborhood, which all end up here. So I get every kind of book that you can think of. This is a book that has mathematics written into it, and I love it. Minecraft. So I get like video game book series because they all love this. They all love Minecraft. So if they like Minecraft, you get the Minecraft books. If they like dinosaurs, you get them dinosaur books, right? This is what you do. Find something that your children love and get them a lot of that. Your children are not going to read, like I just gave away a series of books because I bought it and I thought it was really cute, but my son was completely uninterested in it, and I didn't understand because he usually is interested in chapter series. He could have cared less. You just have to buy a bunch of books. The way that I buy books is that I just go to the Goodwill, because they're only soft cover books are only 77 cents, and hardcover books usually are like $1.50. And so I can go to the Goodwill and I can get a bunch of books for $5 to $10, and then you never know what your children will like. But when they're like trying to watch TV or trying to play video games or trying to play with a tablet or with your phone, and you say no, then they're going to be bored, and then they're going to have a lot of books to pick from, and next thing you know, they're reading. If your children like Angry Birds, get them Angry Birds books. This book is so funny. A lot of struggling readers do not read fiction, and that's one thing across the board. You need to have better vocabulary if you want, for children that are struggling to read. A lot of the times, and struggling to read, and particularly with fluency and with reading comprehension, they're reading, but they don't have the vocabulary and they don't have the background information to really understand what's going on in the text. So one of the ways that we increase reading comprehension is not just to make your child more aware of the text and the fact that we want to get something out of it and ask a lot of questions, but also to improve, one, vocabulary, and two, rich experiences. So the more your children are aware and the more your children have background information about a topic, the more they're able to understand the text. And so it doesn't matter where you are, you can create rich experiences for your children, and you can expose them to a large range of things, regardless of where you are or how much money you have. So that's kind of one of your jobs, especially as your children get older and texts get more complex at school. Your children will need to have more vocabulary, more background knowledge on text, on different topics, in order to understand the text better. So that's kind of your job, and we'll go through that. But this is what I was gonna say. A lot of children that struggle with reading comprehension and vocabulary do not read nonfiction. Nonfiction is kind of your friend. It's your friend, not kind of, but nonfiction is a gem. It really is, because nonfiction books are no nonsense when it comes to vocabulary. They have a lot of vocabulary and they have proper sentence structure. And what I mean by that is they're written in a way that's very advanced. And, sometimes with children's books, they use kind of kid language, and grammatically they're not ideal, or they will use more beat built into it, more rhyme. Chapter books in the junior series are kind of written in slang. You have all of those things, and those books are great, but the real deal comes with nonfiction. The problem is that a lot of our children are not interested in nonfiction, and it is your job to get them interested in nonfiction, because that is going to expose them to proper sentence structure, to great, rich vocabulary. So, Angry Birds, I want to show you, like, the kids, not just my son, but the kids in my neighborhood, there's like 6 of these. They love Angry Birds so much. This is like a dinosaur. There's an Atlas one. There's one about countries. These books have so much wear and tear because they love them. They really love them because they're Angry Birds, and they're not about Angry Birds at all. They're about science, and they just stick some Angry Bird pictures in them along the way. There's one about space, and all of them pretty much look like this. So you have to find a way to really engage the child. I like these nonfiction books. They have, like, it could be as simple as having these kind of flip things, see-through things. I have this series, and sometimes it's just kind of the visual, but they will really get very interested in nonfiction, and that's great. I'm pretty sure you guys all follow my friend Akua, the children's author, and she has great nonfiction books. She has 3, and there are other ones, and those are about people. So figures in history is very good. So not just animals or space, but also just nonfiction about people, and those are wonderful because they're all books about Africans, and so that's great. And so once again, you really do have to get your children engaged and get them a lot of nonfiction because it's awesome. I like this, again, this Minecraft series. These also take a beating. The other reason that I like about them is because it's technical. That's another reason why I love video games how-tos, because they're very technical. So we want to expose our children to technical information. I mean, you have the children here talking to me about prisms and chess and enchantments and iron and all these other things that they talk to me about. And it's all from Minecraft and from these books. So, how-to books, very technical. So now you're exposed them to technical writing, and nonfiction books about science, very another way to expose them to advanced vocabulary. So we want to do those things. Again, so get them exposed to books and engage them in independent reading. And I just wanted to let you know that you're just going to be like, what should I get? What is my child going to be interested in? And the thing about I always say, I don't know, because I have Captain Underpants. That's a great series. I have The Notebook of Doom. That's a great series. I have a lot of different ones in my home library that for my child and for the children in the neighborhood. But I can tell you that it ranges. And so the best thing that you can do is just buy a bunch of them. And remember that one Xbox game is going to cost you $40, $50, $30, and you can get 40 books for that one game. I'm not saying don't get them the game. I'm just saying that there is a way to just get 40, 50 books and get arranged, get yourself just kind of a variety of books. And next thing you know, your children will start to become more engaged. You can also have children swap books, and that really helps. You also can have children do, like we do it about once a month. We didn't do it over the holidays, but once a month where children can come and bring their books to your house, and they just kind of have a circle. They bring the books that they're currently reading. If they're not currently reading, they can pick one and they can read aloud. They can share a passage. That's also really good to just kind of that peer-to-peer pressure. You know, peer pressure is real and you want to use it for a positive thing. And so create opportunities for children to talk about texts that they're reading. What that's going to do is the children that are not reading are going to want to start reading so that they can have something to share the next time. So if you do that every month, so that your children, or every 2 weeks, so that your children know, hey, I need to kind of read something this month because next month I don't want to be left out. That also creates that kind of positive peer pressure and positive peer influence to be engaged in writing. So, in reading. So you're going to have to do that yourself. You're going to have to expose your children to how-tos, expose your children to rich experiences, expose your children to peers, expose your children to nonfiction. Those are all things that are going to help your child with reading comprehension, because they're going to expose your child to different language, to different literacy texture, like sentence structure, and vocabulary, so that when they're reading independently, they have more tools in their kit. So that's kind of a big deal, and I wanted to show you this. I was going to talk about poetry really quickly, but I won't. No, I will, just quickly, because I found this great book. It was actually a question that somebody shared with me probably like 2 months ago. I'm kind of behind my questions, but about poetry. Some children like it and some don't. The cool thing about poetry is that if you read like some classic poetry books, is that it's also another way to expose your children to logic, because poetry is a lot like riddles. You have to kind of get it. And a way to get it is that you have to understand the meaning of the words. And some parents were telling me, like, how exactly do you read poetry? And it's very honest. How exactly do we read any children's books? Well, a lot of us don't really know how to read them. So I found this great book, and I find them all the time. And I just wanted to show you that it's great to get books with a CD. So books with audio is great, because you may not be able to read a book aloud, because, for example, like you might not be good at reading poetry. So get a poetry book that has a CD with it, and you guys can listen to it in the car, and then that'll help you and it'll help the child. The child can read along, you can listen, and then when you're having a private time to read, you already know how to read it. That's how I learned to read Dr. Seuss. I had all these Dr. Seuss books, and I could not for the life of me read them in any way that was engaging when my son was little. So I got a book of Dr. Seuss on audio. And then once I heard it, I heard all the brilliantness of it. I learned to read it, I practiced, and then I read it to my child. And then that's how we kind of carried on that Dr. Seuss tradition in my house, not because I'm brilliant, not because somebody read it to me, not because I knew how to read it, but because I found a CD that taught me how to do it. So we have to become autodidactic, self-didactic. If you don't have the skill, you get it. That's what you gotta do for the kids, for the babies. That's what we're doing. So reading comprehension. I can give you a few strategies, but again, it's integrative. You have to be able to have vocabulary in order to improve your reading comprehension. So in order to do that, you have to have exposure to literacy. The other thing, and so vocabulary and reading comprehension go together. The other thing with reading comprehension, more tricks, and I'm just giving you all tricks. Something like Harry Potter. So you have a second grader. Listening comprehension is always greater than reading comprehension. But if you improve listening comprehension and you improve vocabulary, your reading comprehension will improve also. It kind of works that way. So you're a second grader struggling to read, or third grade struggling to read, you can get a book like Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter. Not Harry Potter. If you're morally against sorcery or any of that stuff, I get it. I get it. But I'm not. So like Harry Potter, the great thing about this is that they have this whole series also on audio. So what's great about this is that your child can, you can read it to your child, but also your child can listen to it and read along in the car or with headphones on your computer, on your CD player, however you choose to do it. But I love that because it allows the child do it with the book. It allows your child to follow along, and sometimes they're not going to follow along to the whole thing, but they'll pick up language structure and words as you go. So it's very good to get, with children, it's very good to get 1 or 2 levels higher than they're currently reading on audio. So if your child is reading a first grade level, you can still get them a second or third grade level book if they're doing it on audio. So get a book, get audio, and go through it together. That's going to help your child hear it and see it. That's going to help your child's fluency improve because they're going to read it at a pace. Remember, when your child is struggling, right, they're struggling to read, they're not picking up on the pace. That is hurting their fluency, because they're having issues decoding. So they start to read like this inside their mind. So even when we work on phonics, and even when we start giving them a better toolkit, they end up still reading like this. And you cannot have fluency and you cannot have reading comprehension if that's how you're reading. So what you want to do, those books on audio are like serious business. I love them still to this day. My son is an excellent reader. I try to find all kinds of books on audios for him to read. And I personally, I don't know if you guys know about audible.com, but I listen to audiobooks all day long, and that's how I stay on top of all the stuff that I need to for my health business. So whatever is out there, new health stuff out there, I'm always in the know because I listen to everything, you know, when I'm doing laundry, while I'm writing, while I'm working. So books on audio are great for adults and for children, but it's one of those things where you can still be doing the work when you're not doing your reading intervention. So this is, you know, getting your child up to speed is going to take a lot of work, and we just kind of hit it from different angles. I hope that makes sense to all of you guys. So those are kind of, I'll do 2 more things. I know I promise I wanted to do this under 30 minutes, but it doesn't work that way. Reading aloud is another way, just like the nonfiction, just like the how-to books, just like the books on audio. Reading aloud is just something that you're going to have to do when your child is struggling to read. You're just going to have to do it. You cannot stop reading to your children. If you go to Oxford, if you go to major universities, professors still read to their students aloud. Reading, listening comprehension is always greater than reading comprehension. So you're just going to have to find short stories to read to your children in chapter books, and you're going to have to do it for a long, long time, hopefully until they're teenagers and they tell you to get out of their room, and then you can read some more. So this is just one book that I have by Jim Trelease, which I love. I love his work. I love his philosophy. So I'm going to put it here. He has the Great Read Aloud Handbook, another book that has changed everything for me, and I highly recommend, and I use it as a source in my book. Hey, listen to this. I like this because it's just a bunch of different stories, short stories that you can read to your children, and if they're like after first grade. So I would say this is like 1st to 4th grade to read to them, even 5th grade. So read aloud to your children. That again is going to expose your children to sentence structure, and is going to expose your children to beat, to fluency, because they are reading like this and they need someone else in their ear to not be reading like that. So that is how they're going to pick up on beat and how their fluency is going to increase once we've done the phonics piece. That's why all of this goes together, because we have to improve with their phonics, yes. But at the same time, they're still reading like that, even with phonics, because they just have the chunks. We're going to have to work on blending. We're going to have to develop the ear. That's another webinar. But none of that is going to help reading comprehension like fluency, like a developed vocabulary, like last week in the other webinar when I said you're going to have to look at those Where's Waldo books. You're going to find hidden pictures. You're going to have to train that eye to notice differences. And how you do that is by looking at those two pictures and circling the differences. You're going to have to develop that eye. We have to do all of it. It's not about what can I do, it's about we have to increase vocabulary. We have to have our children listen to us read and listen to audiobooks so that their fluency, their beat, their language structure, how they hear it improves. And we have to do those pictures so that our children's eyes start to notice things in the text so that they can, again, be able to transfer that skill over to reading comprehension. So those are things that need to happen on top of the phonics piece. When you put them all together, that's how you have a child that has improvement in the area of reading comprehension. A lot of the times, the reason that we're not seeing that improvement is because we're not taking an integrative and multifaceted approach. Build that vocabulary, expose your children to language structure, expose your children to listening to somebody who was fluently reading. And then to go back to the first thing that we talked about is whatever your child is working on and reading, when you do a session, you have to make sure that you are constantly reminding your child that we're reading to get something out of this. We're reading to get something out of it. So let's think about every single time that you sit down to read, what are you going to get out of it? Is it a character? That's why chapters are good, because you can think about what happened last time. So is it that the character wants to do this? Is this nonfiction? Is it a passage? Okay, so if it's a passage for school, you know that at the end of the questions, at the end of the passage, you're going to have to answer questions. What are they going to be the questions? You know they're going to ask you about plot. You know they're going to ask you about the characters. You know they're going to ask you what happened first, so sequence. So you know what they're going to ask you at the end of the passage when it comes to schoolwork. So what are the common questions? How, what are they? And let's make sure that we're looking at them. So a child should already have the technique that every single time that you're reading, you're getting something out of it. We read with intent. We have intention. We have something that we want to get out of the text. That has to be a habit that your child develops. And so let's summarize it in saying, if your child is struggling with reading comprehension, there are a couple things that you need to do. One, when you're doing a working exercise at home, make sure, and it's like short passages and you're going to answer questions, make sure that you always read the text so that you can answer the questions as well and you guys can talk about them. So that's that. The other thing is that make sure that you are talking to your child and you're letting them know that you're always going to want to get the information out with your child. You want to get the information out of the text. That's another thing that you always have to systemically do. The other thing is that you're going to want to improve that vocabulary and expose your child's ear to a fluent reader. The only way that you're going to do that is through audiobooks and to reading out loud. Those are kind of the things that I covered on today's. Man, I want to do one more thing. I'll do it next week. So that's it. And we'll just keep building. And if you have questions or some of this is not making sense or is clicking or is not clicking, then just contact me. There's a couple other points for reading comprehension and techniques that we can go over. Those are just kind of, I'm giving you some tools so you understand how they all work and how We really do have to get all of these pieces in line to make sure that our children are not just reading, but they're reading fluently and they're operating at their best level. So that's it. And thank you for tuning in, whether you're tuning in live or you're tuning in, during the week. Everybody should have access to my email, but it is urbanbailout@gmail.com. Of course, you can DM me. Please don't DM me, actually, because I never check. But just email me. That's the best way to reach me. So reach me on email, or the comments on Raising Readers is also really good. Just no DMs. And that's it, guys. Share the information, and I hope it helps. I'll see you later.